All right. So hello, everyone. My name is Charles Rayburn. I am your assigned customer success advocate. I'm kind of the tie amongst you all. You know my voice all too well. I do have here Scott Wallace, Ben Ennis, and Namita Mishra as our senior resident subject matter expert for this topic. Today, we're going to talk about skills and roles. So it's so exciting. We know the format. Pretty much the first 20 minutes is the team from ServiceNow reviewing a PowerPoint deck and discussing the topic nature, level setting. If they need to jump into the product and show you some of the examples, etc., they will do that. And then the remaining 40 minutes is an open-ended discussion. Definitely appreciate everyone taking a moment to submit questions through the chat window or just kind of asking those and giving other customers time. There's about 5 customers and presence today to participate in this office hour. So I hope that'll be one that will definitely cover as much as we can. And if there's any other questions that we don't cover, I'll definitely capture those, or you can send those to me and I'll try to get answers to those post the call. So any questions or comments from anyone in the field? If not, Scott, Ben, and Namita, it's all yours. I'm going to mute myself.
Thank you, Charles. Good Friday to everybody out there. Valentine's Day and all that, as you mentioned. It's kind of funny. So I'm glad to be talking to you guys again. It's nice. About this time about roles and skills. And so I have a few slides just to kind of go through some terminology and some kind of definitions. And then we'll take some questions and we can go in the system and look at stuff, as Charles mentioned. And I have Ben and Amit on too. So first, let's take a look at just kind of foundational. There's pieces that build out around roles and skills.
I can just take this at my desk.
No. I can listen to it.
But you want to display over here and you can work over there, or how do you want to do it?
Hi, can you mute your line real quick?
Yeah, could you guys mute?
Okay.
Good. Okay, so roles and skills, right? So resource user, right? I mean, foundation of the system, right? Key thing you probably already know is PPS_resource is the role that's required to basically link itself to PPM, right? It's a way to identify resources. You may have thousands of users in the system, but until they have PP_resource, they're not really. We don't find that. We don't find them unless they have that, basically, right? It's foundation resource management. So groups, right? So resource groups. So when you think about groups, foundationally at the system level, right? Same thing. You may have hundreds, if not thousands of groups. I've some people integrate with AD and they bring in a printer group, things like that. Lots and lots of groups that are used for different purposes in the system. But again, same concept here for group. To bring in that group into a group that's defined for, it's using PPM, which is PPS resource, right? And so around that same topic on groups, I think we might have covered this in the past, but some organizations use all the groups together like this. Some groups create their own specific groups for PPM and put the people in them. And you can be in many groups, by the way, of course. So it really kind of depends how your architecture is and how you update, and if it's automated, and if it comes from Active Directory kind of thing. It depends on how your system's set up. But so groups can kind of function in different ways. But the key thing I want to note is that skill can belong to a group, right? So some things, when you look at a group, what does a group hold? Matter of fact, I'll just go to look. Let's go look at that. Look at a group. Like just take, let's just architects, right? We use analysts a lot, right? So members, groups, you can nest groups, of course, right? And it has skills. So if you want, and we'll see this in a second, I'll kind of explain this, but a group can have a set of skills if you want to. Therefore, whoever is in that group would inherit those skills. You can also have skills assigned to a person. There's kind of different ways to go about it in terms of how you want to do skills in relation to that, right? So kind of back here, back to the foundation of, you got the basic building blocks of the group and the user, right? Then you get to role. So when you get to role, different roles, different purposes, right? There's a specific one assigned to a user. And by the way, there's a role for access and there's role for using in PPM, right? So when you get over, let's see back here. right? So there's roles for users. So when you get to roles for user, that's kind of like permission, like admin permission. It says, yeah, these all come, most of these come standard in the system. You know, there's like 400 in this system here, 400 roles that give you different rights to the system. Then you have resource roles, which is like, what am I acting as? Not necessarily permissions. You might get permissions as a result of this group, being in this group, right? Like a DBA is an example I think we have, right? You know, here's the people in that group. So know the difference between those, of course, is there's a role based on the user, then there's a roles for the resource itself, right? And then as we work down, we get into the concept of skills, okay? So couple things that I want to mention about skills. First, it's a platform feature. Initially was developed to support finding a very specific skill in ITSM. So I have a task, this task requires someone with a specific skill. So we needed the assignment when you have your incident problem change, that whole workflow. I need someone that has this exact thing. Oh, here's the 3 people. Automate that process of finding the skill and doing the assignment. That's why the skill originally was developed, right? So it's a platform feature. It is an application. So when you're in the system and you type in skill, you'll see that there's an entire section. Like if I click on getting started, that'll take you to the docs pages, and there's an entire section on skills, how they're used in ITSM service management, HR, and project. It'll describe it. There's actually specific roles in, user, access roles that give you permissions to use skills and how to use skills, right? So think about it in the concept, it is an application in the system. It's not something that just happens to be part of PPM. It is an application for the system, right? Like I said, you can inherit skills in a group or direct as a user. Using skills management, I think, effectively what it is, it's a more mature way of using the system, especially in PPM. There's a lot of setup and taxonomy you need to set up when you create skills, the relationships, the dependencies, and I'll show you the next slide here. It has some more, really more interesting stuff here. I think this is the best slide for that. Is the taxonomy of skills is you have set up a structure, and then that structure is used by different applications, right? You get assignments with users and groups, and it's being used in ITSM, CSM, right? Field service. HR obviously can use it, and then PPM. So it's a platform base that's used in a lot of places. In my experience, maturity for customers, usually they use groups as a starting point in PPM. It's kind of the base. As they get more mature, they move into role. I prefer to use role most of the time because a role, you could have a different role in a group, right? Many different roles. A role is more specific when you're planning, like I need this type of role. I don't know who's going to do it, but it's a role. Where a group might have a lot of different definitions to a group. Okay, is the group an IT manager with the same people in it? And this is actually explains a little further down. Next slide, I'll explain that. But so from a concept of skills, it's a more mature process to incorporate into your business. My history tells me most customers, they get kind of wrapped around the axle when they hit skill because they think that it needs to come from an HR system, and it could, by the way, but a lot of organizations don't have that set up. They might have roles set up possibly, but they probably don't have skills. If they have skills, okay, then is there an integration point between another HR system and your system, or do you set up your own structure here to support just say ServiceNow? Well, what if your resource pool is much broader than ServiceNow? Okay, what skills do I need beyond that? So it gets, it's like taking on a new application. There are skill reports in the system, right? As there are resource reports and group reports and all that. Those are pretty standard. But there are several skill reports that kind of helps you look at the matrix of the skills. If there's people with missing, right? There's things that are missing. The usages of skills like top 10 used skills. If you're using skills and you're doing assignments, and especially in like ITSM, who's being assigned to what? Who's the most active skill being used? Maybe that helps you for staffing, right? So when you think about the structure of groups, right, as you can look into the roles, right? there's a way to look at group structure. Like that's kind of the baseline, and you get into roles. So you may have a group that is just a person. Like we go pick a person. You know, really you're not even using a group or a team. It's like, I want to go find somebody. We'll go find them. Resource management today, you can do that. You can find a user. No group necessary. The next one is there's a few groups. This is probably where most customers kind of start. It's probably at 2. It's the base kind of foundation, which is I've got an IT group. Maybe you have groups by region, you know, right? The basics. But the people in the group are more geographic than they are, say, skills or role-based. It's probably more geographic. Then 3 is probably where you start to step up and begin to consider role. Is I have specialized groups. And these groups have people in them that have unique skills. And remember, like say, I use myself as an example, like Scott Wallace. Maybe Scott Wallace has DBA skills and he's also a project manager. So I may be in a group that has DBA and it may be in another group called project manager. I can be in several groups based on kind of my role. So maybe someone's searching for me based on my need for a PM or based on my need for DBA, something like that, right? Then you get number 4, right? Which is kind of, I think probably more directionally where we're going largely for team-based, which is there's roles in a group. So you establish a group, and in that group, there's different skills, right? Different capabilities and different skills. So maybe in that group, you have IT people, DBAs, QAs. This is probably much more in the flavor of Agile, the team, kind of the team concept. But I would say most organizations start with 2, work to 3. That's where you start to look at, okay, am I using HR for this? Is there an HR system separate? Am I building my own? As an example, what if you had a geographic group like APJ? And in APJ, you had different people in that group with different skills. So maybe I have different roles inside that group. So APJ is a group, but in APJ, I have a group of DBAs, you know, and that's where the hierarchy comes in place. So maybe the hierarchy is group APJ. In APJ, you have group called DBA, Dev, QA, UX, but they all roll up to APJ. That's kind of where you get the hierarchy. You get the parent, because you can do parents in groups too, right? It's all hierarchy based, right? So some concepts to think about when you do groups, and you do groups, you know, kind of develop all this, right? I think this use case for skills will largely be driven by the need for skills. So the question is going to be, do I need skills? Do I need, first place you haven't even established in a business, are you even using a skill? Is it even a lexicon in your business? Are you using skills? Is there such a thing, right? And then within the skills, are you using capabilities in those skills, like the competency level of those skills, right? So when you look at skills, like I'll go back here in the system, when you look at skills, you have like the taxonomy of the skill, right? These are the structure, project manager, languages, competencies, right? Then you have skill levels. Like, okay, it's just a behavioral, it's an experience, general, language, technical, right? Right. And then you have to also, as an example here, determination of skills. This is largely driven by ITSM. There's no rules in here yet, right? And there's dashboards in this too, right? There's dashboards that allow you to search for skills. It gives you who has what skills assigned, right? So there's some support around the skills, right? If you look at all skills, it's like, okay, here's a definition of everybody. Here's all the skills I have in the system, right? And if I go to like my skills that I look at here and I just look at everybody, look at all, right? I'll just get everybody here. And then I can go look at people, right? I can look at the individuals. It's kind of like, there's a lot of ways, the data, how it's arranging, there's a lot of ways to do searching on this, right? Skills taxonomy here, right? Rules, skill levels, right? So these are all the things. I think some of this is probably set up as a result of demo data being loaded. I don't think this comes, the tables are there out of the box, but I don't think all this is. So user skills. So here's an example of, we've talked about Troy McCoy. We've used him a lot, right? So Troy McCoy, as a member of different groups, okay, it's inherited from these different groups, right? So he's in database group and he's in the ServiceNow development group. Because of that, he inherits these specific skills. And I've also given a proficiency level of those skills. So if I'm looking for someone who's a SQL DBA, who's, you know, administration, you're thinking about like really granular, right? It's not just SQL, but it's administration versus performance, right? So I need someone who's, you know, so this gives an example of the kind of level of detail you go to if you set this structure up completely, right? So that's why kind of when I say it's maturity, it's a lot to set up. It's a big use of maturity, right? So taxonomy, like this is how the structure exists, right? When you think about adding skills to the use in the system, to kind of know why you're doing it, understand what it's going to do, how you're going to use it. Since it is a platform capability, make sure you know where the dependencies are. Like if you decide in PPM to use skills, make sure that whoever you're working with, something doesn't suddenly show up in ITSM that surprises them, right? So I'm going to click next here, 2 screenshots of when you're using the allocation workbench. Today you're thinking, okay, I want to find somebody. Okay, maybe I find them via a group. Okay, I need a DBA. Okay, I created a resource plan and I have a project. I'm looking for a DBA. So you can go search a couple ways, 2 ways primarily. One is search by role called DBA. Boom, okay. Maybe there's some other criteria. You could get more specific by region or something like that, right? Or go by group. Remember I suggested like APJ, and the APJ has different groups underneath it. Maybe you search by DBA. Oh, I need DBA in APJ, right? I didn't go that far. I just searched all DBAs. And it gives you the indication here of who's available, who's not available, right? So there's one way to search. The other way is if you're going to use skills in this kind of a model, you're going to need to step to the next level, and it's called advanced. And advanced, you get to plug in and create the actual query yourself. So this here, what I basically said is I'm looking for skill, and I specifically chose SQL DBA for the search. So if you want to get, really granular, it's like, okay, I have a DBA. I need to assign them to this request here. This one here, I'm on ServiceNow Communities Implementation. I'm looking for DBA, specifically my SQL DBA for administration and configuration. Okay, who's available? Here's my availability list, right? So it's kind of like you're really going very, very granular. You're kind of working your way down. All right. So with that, I think I've kind of gone through kind of like this outline. Let's just open it up for Q&A and questions and any comments. I'd love to know if anyone's even using skills or how you're using it. Also roles, I think is an important one, right? If you're using roles or starting to use roles.
Okay, who wants to be the first one with their question? Don't be shy.
Okay, I'll go. This is Glenn with Vidant. And I'm interested to know if anyone else is using skills as well. We are not currently, but we have a pilot that we're kind of just waiting for this call to move forward. So we're planning to work with one of our teams, the DBA team, and try to get it right, so to speak, and feel good about it and communicate it and get feedback, and then sort of pursue rolling it out to the other teams. And I attended a Resource Management Institute conference in October, and skills was a big topic there, and the biggest caution from everybody was don't go crazy with skills. And so I'm interested in any feedback you have on that, and any any templates for an enterprise IT shop. So I think what we want to be strategic about as we move forward is to have as small as possible a set of skills, but ones that are meaningful. And since we're new at that, any feedback would be helpful.
Is anyone else using skills on the call? Nobody? Yeah.
We are not at Wake Forest.
Okay. which is no surprise to me because most, like I said, it's not common to see it because it takes a lot to set up and manage it, and it's also maturity level, right? Most people, like I said, get to role, then you get to skill. But skill is, there's, as you can imagine here, it's like, okay, where's the, you could get really wrapped around the axle fast. There's a lot of definitions you could have. I like the idea of, start simple, right? Maybe you start with one particular area where you have a good business use case for it, because you have to very specific skills like here, like I said, the DBA ones, things like that. They're very, very specific capabilities that you want to find versus say like project management. Okay, maybe the only thing in PM might be competency levels, right? Mature, not mature, staff, things like that. Where in a tech side of it, you have very specific skills that, you're not going to have an Oracle tuning going to be a SQL tune, very specific skills. I mean, I'll also throw something else out too, because I know this is principally a US call, but outside of the United States, principally and Namita, if you're on, you can comment on this too, but some learnings we're down in Australia is skill is kind of a foundation for the whole, when you think about person's capabilities, you think about like LinkedIn and all this kind of stuff and everything, skills is a very big portion of how they find people to do work, including competency, like demonstrated competency demonstrated over a certain period of time. It's a very, very big feature. So I think in other parts of the world, we might see skills used more often than in the US. In Europe, it's used in a slightly different way, but the same thing, that when they search for something, they're searching for not only a specific skill, but they're after a competency in that skill.
That's right. Yeah. So they also go with the proficiency level, competency level, not just at the first skill, but even if I'm a Java developer, how proficient I am in Java, right? Excellent or beginner, things like that.
Yeah. Right. So maybe that's something else you want to include when you think about kind of starting out as a pilot for this is, are you going to add, besides this to skill, are you going to add another dimension to it, which is kind of the competency metric, right?
And how would we do that?
Interesting point, because proficiency changes. So I'll just give you an example. Two different industries, like the IT, you think about like Java developers and all those kind of thing, right? But when there is some like news agency or something like that, communication side, they say, oh, we do that, but I would like to see French who can speak, write, and just understand. So you see the variation is there, competency level is there, but you cannot use the same values for every kind of thing. So you have to think that also in which area you are using.
Yeah, this is an example of where you look at the levels, right? The skill levels. And you could define your own levels, right? This is the basic, it's a language skill, it's technical skill, behavior skill. And this is kind of why I said in terms of a structure, like I know what you're asking for. It's kind of like, have you seen this before? Someone's established a model for an IT shop, right? Kind of like an enterprise IT shop. I personally haven't seen one myself. But I don't know if have you ever seen one in any of the customers? I haven't, I wish I had a model, but I don't have one.
No, I don't. I do not.
Yeah. We can ask. I'll ask. I'll see if I can see if anyone will search our groups and talk to some people, see if anyone has like a model that might help you out.
All right, great. In regards to competencies, would you use the skill level to reflect competency? Is that what you meant?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, you could. Right. When you think about the skill, yes, correct. You could, right? Yep.
You mentioned group skills earlier.
Yeah.
So if we assigned a skill to a group, can we see that skill by going to each user?
Yes, you
member
can.
of that group show there as well?
Yeah.
All right, great.
So like if I add skill here, like if I say in the analyst group has, let's find something down here, analyst group, data sciences, or data analytics. That's probably a good one, right? Right. And then the group members. Okay, because this skill shows up here, the group members, if you go look at the group members, they inherit that skill, right? I said it's the wrong view, but they'll inherit that skill because it's in the group, correct? And that's actually how a lot of people, I think, start out, is they don't assign skills to a person. They say, hey, the analyst group has these skills, this person's in the group, the assumption being that they have that skill. And you can see the inherent, right? Yep. So that's, I think that's like kind of the foundation, the basic way to go about it. The starting, kind of the starting point, which is kind of the model we had here, probably 3. But yeah, they can inherit. And again, it gets most complicated, of course, when you say, hey, listen, I have another system, or even ServiceNow, that assigns very specific skills and the competency levels, to a person. Like when I come in, Scott's got a whole set of skills. It's kind of like basically a very large HR dimension, right? That populates all of that data. So when you're looking at something, it's like, hey, the user record holds that data versus a group. Yeah.
Good questions. Other customers, any questions around skills, group assignments, user assignments, roles?
I have a question. This is Heather, about the skills, the application menu. I was just looking in our instance, and it looks like we don't have as many options under the menu there, under skills. Is that a New York or a plugin?
New York instance, I'm not aware of anything that's changed in it.
Okay, so it might be a plugin that we're not
It's a plugin.
using. Okay.
Yeah, let's see. I thought there's a few more than this. There's 3 skills. Yeah, there's 3 active plugins here, right? Skills management, library of skills, and then skills determination, which is probably the ITSM support of, hey, I have very specific things I want to route. That's why when you look under skills, you have determination. This determination here
Let me look
gives you that determination rules. And this is where you probably set up, okay, here's how I route, here's how I find, here's how I use the hierarchies, right? That's probably where all that's set up. I'm not directly familiar with it, but that's.
Yeah, if you install the ITBM like application, so project portfolio, suite, financials, you'll get the skills management plugin, but nothing else.
Okay, that's why.
Yeah, there's the rules here. So you create all these rules, right? Define skills, you define all the rules.
Yeah, the typical use case here is for like any kind of shared services area where you've got large groups that are doing like tickets. So it'd be a network group, a large application group, or like a Windows group or a server group with all these people that have, maybe you got 20, 30 people in a group and they all have different skills, and then you want to route tickets to them based on their skill set. That would be a typical use case that we'd have. And that's also part of the reason why that skill determination rule is in there.
Okay.
Is anybody using roles today? Just out of curiosity. With resource management, I should say.
Anyone thinking of using roles?
Yeah. Well, I'm just curious, like in real life here, like, are we just normally using groups? Is that kind of how everybody's been using resource management, or has anybody actually gone down the route of defining a few roles or anything like that?
We're just using groups.
Okay.
We're just
our resource groups are essentially siloed to folks of comparable skills and roles today.
Gotcha. Okay. So you'd have like a project manager group and a developer group or things like that.
Correct.
So is that do you organize those applications specific? Like, so if you had a specific applications. So your application group might be like SAP or Oracle, or if you're healthcare, you have Epic, right? You have an Epic group, probably multiple Epic groups. Is that how it's set up today?
Essentially, yes. Our Epic groups are a little different. So the groups are split out based upon the modules that they support within Epic, but same concept.
Right. Okay. Somebody else was going to say something then.
Yeah, at Cone Health, we currently use the groups as well. And it might be the better direction. Right now, if we have a particular group, I'm going to pick on the interface team, that there's some people that just have a very particular set of skills. We tend to just individually assign people to those particular projects.
So you basically kind of build your own group for.
Right.
Okay.
And we also have subgroups within groups sometimes and break it out that way. But this might be the better option. We just didn't really have it to pursue before, or didn't know. Yeah.
The one thing that we see a lot of is, and there's not really a prescriptive way to do it in the product, is that kind of during the demand phase, sort of building a team to execute the project. And sometimes that's in the form of, like you said, assigning individuals to resource plans, and we just kind of build our team that way. Or if you're a Scrum or Agile team, you might actually physically make an Agile group, spin up an Agile group as part of that demand, which has got all your PMs and your developers and everybody in it. And then you run it that way through Scrum or through our Agile application. But one of those two routes, I wish there was a more like a actual step in the demand process to tell you to do that, and then have it carry over into whatever the work item is, whether it's a set of stories, an epic or a theme or something, or it's a project. So I'm just curious how people are doing that today. So sounds like one of you are just creating resource plans with individuals on it. Is anybody doing anything any different?
We actually have a discovery report that we create during our demand process that will give the estimates by group. So that really could be the beginning of our resource planning, I guess. And then to my point later, if I have to, make some specific changes, I will. But we do first go by group when we're in the demand phase.
Okay.
And how many hours it'll take for that group.
Yeah, that's with the assumption that group has potentially multiple people that could fill the role of whatever it is that you're asking for, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
So one quick question, not specifically on the roles or the groups I have for the folks here, but more on the resource plan. When as a resource manager, you go onto the resource allocation workbench, as Scott was showing, do you confirm or allocate at the resource plan level, or do you have this practice of confirming and allocating user by user in that group? Yeah, if you can, that would be much better. Thank you. I'm wondering if people are using that functionality, Scott. That's why I'm asking this. So if Scott goes onto this, one of the allocated resource plans at the top, and yeah, this is my question. And if you expand this, so you go onto this ellipsis at the resource plan level, right click and say confirm, or you go resource by resource allocation level and say confirm, or you come down like Scott was asking and do it from the resource finder. What is the normal way you do that?
I don't think we have this workbench yet. We're waiting for it. We're excited about it.
Oh.
Especially, like I said, different teams. Some teams don't matter. The ambulatory team, for example, there's 13 of them on that team. They have about the same amount of skills. The hours don't matter, or they do, but I don't think that resource manager would want to go that deep, where the interface manager is much more detailed, resource manager, and would want to go per individual. And this would be fabulous for her.
What release are you on?
I'm on the one before this, right? I think I'm
London?
on Madrid.
Because this shows up in Madrid, and it's been enhanced in New York. It is in Madrid.
Okay, let me talk to Jonathan. He can help me out there.
Yeah, it's there.
Sorry. Thank you. That's a big help for me, just that today.
Yeah, Madrid and New York, big enhancements. And this is New York, and even more enhancements in Orlando. And this is unification we talk about. I think we have last previous session, we talked about the concept that we're trying to drive where you can use this here for everything you want, right? So creating resource plans, updating assignments, you know, I need to change things. I can inline edit, I can find resources, I can search resources. I mean, this is trying to bring basically everything into this view here for you. Yep.
And even coming up in Paris.
Yeah, it'll even be, yeah. Orlando's out pretty much now, real soon, right? It's early access right now. And then there's even more, like Namita said, there's even more stuff coming out in Orlando. Or I'm sorry, Paris.
In Paris, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I keep telling my guy. I need to go to Paris.
Yeah, Orlando's not that exciting. Although I hope all of you are going to be with us in Orlando, Florida, right? Yeah, that'll be nice.
Yep, we're going to be there.
Good.
Let me know when we're going to Paris. I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's the other one. Is like we all like, okay, Orlando's nice, but the problem is that it was a nice tie at Orlando to Orlando, the release to the destination, right? But it's kind of like, about the Paris one. We'll probably, I know what we could do back at Vegas, and we'll go to, you know.
Fair enough. That works.
We're halfway there. Right? It's close enough.
The Bonamy restaurant. Yeah, they got some really good French bread there. I'm good.
There you go.
We could also too do the Epcot World Showcase France area if you really want.
So yeah, if you haven't used the allocation workbench, I would highly recommend it and get into it. And you create these tiles, and these tiles you can, you know, you can define whatever you want. You can do it any dimension you want to create a tile from, right? And, you know, I'm a user manager, roles, whatever. Then you pick whatever you want. Then you select all their criteria. It's really nice. I just did a simple one here of just saying, this is looking at one group. I'm looking here at a role. Like I'm looking for the role. So that's my DBA role, right? So you can, you know, you can create any kind of dimension you want to manage or search, or, you know, as a user manager versus as a resource manager, you know, there's a lot of different ways to do this.
Paris is going to bring in actual hours though into this script, right? Have already been allocated. Have already been charged.
Good question. Namita's on the line. I know that's on a roadmap. I don't know if it's actuals. Yeah, you're talking actuals here, right? Yeah.
I think it's Paris. That's why I want to go to Paris, because I want my resource managers to learn from what they're currently doing.
Yep.
And it would be
exactly. Yep. You can see it in here. Yeah. I don't know. Is that still in the roadmap?
Yeah. Good
right.
point, Stacy, and thanks, Scott. So basically, Stacy, let me ask you this question: if I bring in the actuals on the lower section, which is resource find, because when you expand, say for example, one of the resources, I think the first one is Beth, if I'm reading it right. So on this particular item, maybe it's a project or demand, what's the actual he has posted? That's what you're looking for, right? So we are thinking to give it here.
Well, I need it in both because the resource manager has to know at the project level how many hours they said we're going to take and how many they actually took, not just at the individual level, but at the project level.
So like in July, you would see another column here that says confirmed allocated 160. I've consumed, you know, 200. I got a problem, right?
Yep. Yeah. And that's really helpful to be on this screen because I might have to move some other things around and I'll know right away.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll add that also in the Paris. Yeah. Thank you.
Can't wait for Paris.
That'll be on, let's see, September.
Yeah. Okay.
And if you have early access to, I'd highly recommend that. If you're looking for something very specific in a release that's coming out, as an example, early access is already completed. It's already out for Orlando. So if you're an early access customer, you get, you know, I think they came out January 27th. So you can get an instance up, you can look at it, you can look at their upgrade notes, you kind of get ahead of the curve if it's a release you want to go on.
Okay.
So, and you can self-nominate for that too. You don't need, it's not required. You can sign up for that in High, self-nominate and get yourself an instance. And of course, we can provide you with like the Delta information and the features and capabilities for that release. So you kind of get ahead of the curve. So when it actually becomes GA, you know, instead of waiting 6 months, you can schedule it out even sooner.
I found your documentation from last time very helpful, like to pull out specifically with the resources, planning what you got going, because you don't tend to feel like reading the book.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. Exactly. And that's why that's why the delta decks are
Yeah,
for,
that's
right?
really helpful.
They're shortcuts to saying what in this particular, of course, from a platform perspective, if you do the upgrade, you have to ask everybody else, right?
Right. You have
I think
to.
I had one customer recently who surprised me. We were talking about an upgrade and I said they want to go to Orlando. And it's like, okay, the early access ready to go. I said, well, you're probably going to need to talk to the platform owner because it's not just about ITBM. And she corrected me very quickly and said, I am the platform owner, which is so unusual, right? For ITBM, PPM in particular, to have, they control the platform, which is kind of, you know, it's usually we kind of follow, right? We follow ITOM and ITSM in terms of, they're usually kind of driving the schedule and the cycles and all that. But this was interesting to have someone who said, well, I am also that. And there were a lot of capabilities inside ITM they wanted, which suddenly ITBM became somewhat of the driver, not ITSM or ITOM, which is interesting. Not very common, but kind of interesting. So any other questions, comments? Anybody?
So can you just clarify what you were talking about on the actuals that's coming new?
Yeah, so I have to, of course,
as opposed to what's there today.
Yeah, be clear and to say that, well, there's actuals in the system, just not on the workbench, right? So
Well, if you go to configuration on the workbench.
All right.
If you go to configuration on the workbench, I have an option for actuals in my breakdown columns, and we use that today.
Yeah. He's talking about, Scott, from the very right before the I, when you click on it.
Yeah.
No, the sliders beside it.
Yeah, on this
right
one.
Beside the I.
Lines.
Right beside the I.
Oh, here.
No.
Sorry.
Up one, yeah,
There.
this one. Absolutely.
Yeah, and then toward the very bottom.
Black hours, right? As an example.
All the way at the bottom.
Yeah, actually.
The breakdown columns.
Yep, actuals, right? It drops it here.
That's what we're using today.
Yeah, it drops it here. It doesn't drop it, period. It's totals. So you can see that. It's just, I can't see an actual. Well, actually it is there.
Yeah, but it's only gonna show for the resource plan, right? There's a field in the resource plan called actuals. Right. It's the individuals that you won't see broken out on this view yet.
Right. So the way that we're utilizing this, and this is Mandy with Wake as well. So that actual column is based off of if there's a resource plan in place and a team member submits time towards that resource plan essentially in their timesheets or time cards, and it will populate there.
Okay.
And it will do the roll up as well.
I have a quick question about what you just said there. And that what if somebody logged some hours and then the manager forgot to do the resource plan and they added the resource plan? Can you ever get those actuals back in there appropriately for the hours that were charged before the resource plan got created?
Yeah, so the way you'd probably have to do that is you'd have to obviously create a resource plan. And then if that time card had already been processed, an expense line would have been created for that. So what you need to do is in the New York release, we have a revert time card capability now. So what you do is revert those time cards, put the correct resource plan in there, and then reprocess them. And then the expense lines will get recreated and and the hours will go in appropriately.
Thank you.
Yep. But you need to be in New York to do that.
I got you. I like New York too. That's fine. This has all been helpful. Thank you very much.
All right, we have 10 minutes left. Any other questions or comments or any other requests on upcoming functionality conversations related to skills and roles? Going once? Going twice? Going 3 times, then I would say thank you guys so much for attending this office hour. Like I said before, I'm going to send out a survey for all of you to provide some good feedback, and then have a great rest of your day. Get 10 minutes back. The next one's going to be prioritizing resources, so that will be a fun conversation as well. All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.